Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 19th of April. So coming to the first article, hard landing. The context here is about the challenges that are being faced by the private airlines in India. This is primarily in the respect to the Jet Airways failing now or the Jet Airways going bankrupt. We had yesterday also discussed a similar article, but this article has some more and some newer points and also a larger perspective to the entire issue. So this is more important as compared to yesterday's article. Now coming to the issues which have been discussed, the first issue that has been discussed here is with regards to some history. Now here the editorial is bringing to light that the history of private airlines in India is showing us that the private airlines in India are somehow not successful, and there are many more airlines before the Jet Airways which have failed. For instance, the Kingfisher had failed in the year 2012. Then there was another airline before that, the Air Deccan or the Air Sahara, and now the Jet Airways. So this is somehow a spree of all private airlines which have failed or which have gone bankrupt. So the problem is something that needs to be analyzed. This is a deeper problem and not the problem of one single airline, which here is the Jet Airways. Rather, this is a problem of the entire system because a number of airlines are what have failed. So this part is what becomes important here. Next, what is important is with regards to the emergency funding. This we had discussed yesterday also, that the banks have a scope for providing some emergency funding if they are hopeful that a particular private enterprise can recover. Now in this particular case, the demand was for 400 crores of private funding, and we should know that the entire losses that Jet Airways is facing is to the tune of 16,000 crore. So in this respect, the bank did not consider Jet Airways anyway viable, and the banks have refused to provide this particular emergency funding, and that is what has been repeated here. Next is something that is new. This is the expression of interest. Now, before selling the assets of any particular private enterprise which has gone bankrupt and now which is insolvent, in that case the lenders, before selling it, call for a meeting of expression of interest where all the people who are interested in buying the assets come and show their interest. Now in this particular case, this expression of interest was what was carried out by the lenders, by the consortium of all the banks. But what has happened is that not many people have shown any interest in purchasing the assets of the Jet Airways, and it is primarily because of this also that this emergency funding was what was refused. Otherwise, there is a lot of lobbying that was done by Jet Airways to ensure that it should get this emergency funding. Next, something that is very, very important is the support that the government is giving to Air India. Now, Air India is the public is a public sector undertaking. It is the government's own airlines, and the Air India itself is also loss making. So what is happening here is that despite the fact that Air India is performing even worse than these private airlines like Jet Airways or Kingfisher, the government continuously pumps money into the Air India, which results in Air India being sustained. Now, is this something ethical, that despite the fact that this is also a part of the same industry, this airlines is also facing the same challenges that all other private airlines are facing, but in this particular case the government is using the public money, but in these private airlines no such benefits are given. So this is an ethical and a moral question that does arise vis-a-vis Air India. Is it ethical for the government to sustain a loss-making undertaking? So these are all some ethical issues, especially vis-a-vis bailing out and support that is given to non-performing public sector enterprises. This is one issue that is emerging, and this is one question that can come. An analysis or a comparison with Air India is what you can be asked to draw. Next, something that you should know here is about the challenges that are being faced. Now clearly, if all the airlines are failing, then there are some deeper challenges. So what are those challenges have been analyzed, and this is what is the most important part of this particular editorial. Now the first challenge here is the fuel cost. Now the fuel cost is what is half of the expenses of running an airline, and the fuel cost is somehow very high. Not only is it high, it is also somehow very, very subjective. It keeps on changing. It is not a permanent thing, rather it is subject to a lot of taxes also. A number of issues are what are there around the fuel, the air fuel is airline fuel, and as a result of which the cost of operation for these private airlines is what becomes unsustainable. Another problem is that of reckless competitions between these airlines. Because of reckless competitions, what is happening is that they are not raising the fares. They are compelled to run at lower fares despite the fact that that is what is loss making. Now, even though this is what is in the interest of the flyers or the citizens, but this in the long run, this is not in their interest, because eventually airlines are failing. For instance, now Jet Airways has has failed, and as a result of which competition itself is then going to get eliminated. So what is important here is that at least a sustainable amount of fare is what is required. Next, something that you should know here is the problem of the margins that are being derived from Air India. The profit margins are also what are wafer thin vis-a-vis all the private airlines, and especially in the case of Air India. So this is what is making this entire industry very, very unsustainable, and these are what are the challenges. Next, what you need to know here is about the suggestions that have been offered. The first suggestion is that all the airlines must come together. They should push for a collective action in light of the collective plight of all of these airlines, and they should set up the fares that are sustainable for the working of the airlines. Next, what is important is that the government should review the fuel taxes and the surcharges that are being charged on the airlines. Also, it should take a look at the airport levies that are being charged by the government, which are exorbitantly high, so that the prices can be sustained and the airlines can work in a better manner. So this is what is important vis-a-vis this particular article. In the backdrop of the failure of Jet Airways, questions about comparison with Air India, questions about bailing out private enterprises, and questions about a general outlook on the airline industry in India are what you can expect. So this is a major event, and questions in this line is what you can expect. So that is the relevance. Coming to the next article, is the Election Commission toothless, or is it refusing to bite? In a line of the spree of articles that we have read on Election Commission of India, this is an interview. Some points are what are new, and we shall be focusing primarily on those. I cannot stress more on the importance of this particular topic for this year's mains. Please focus on this one topic, prepare it well. Question is definitely expected. Coming to the context, now the context here is, as usual, the credibility crisis that the Election Commission of India is facing in the backdrop of the 2019 elections. The issues that are important, the first issue is that of the opacity of the electoral bonds. This we have discussed, that the electoral bonds in itself is an opaque scheme, and what is important here is that the editorial is discussing that after the Supreme Court's judgment of the order, for that matter, that the Supreme Court has ordered that all the political parties are now mandated to supply the information to the Election Commission of India in closed envelopes as to who are the donors who have given them these electoral bonds. Now here you need to know that the editorial here is discussing that in this particular case, the political parties know that who has given them the donation. The banks know that who has given them the donation, because it is through the banks that these electoral bonds have gone. The donor knows that who has given the donation. Now the Election Commission of India will also know that who has given the donation. So when so many people or so many organizations involved here know that about these donations, then why is this information being hidden from the public is what is a cause of concern. Even the public has the right to know, and the public should very much be made aware of this fact, that who has given these electoral bond donations to which political party. Next, what you need to know here is about the court's intervention. This is very, very important. Now, it has been mandated in the Constitution of India that whenever elections are going to be held, courts are not allowed to intervene in that process. This is one process which is insulated from the courts, but it is very, very sad that the courts have to, in this particular case, intervene. And if the courts are now, the Supreme Court has been forced to reprimand the Election Commission of India. It has to remind the Election Commission of India of its responsibilities. So that is one thing that you need to know. Another thing is that the courts have been slow on giving a judgment on electoral bonds. Also in this particular case, the courts have said that the information is to be given in closed envelopes. All of this is what is self-regulation that is being done by the courts, because the courts are mandated to not intervene in elections. So that is one issue that is important. Next is the issue of the collegium for appointment. Now we had discussed that the election commissioner, the chief election commissioner, and the other election commissioners also, they are not appointed based on a collegium. Rather, it is the government who is appointing. So what is important here is the collegium system, which has been discussed. You know, collegium system is also in news for the appointments of the judges of the Supreme Court. So from there you can analyze that here also a collegium sort of a system is what is mandated, so that independence is what can be maintained of this premier institution. And here this can be one example for you to use if you have to ever justify that the collegium system for appointment of judges is not so bad. In UPSC, you will have opportunities to even justify things which probably are not very much you do not have much scope for justification. For example, the collegium system is very much proven to not be a very, very efficient system, and there is no denial of this. But when an analysis is what is to be drawn, in that case you have to bring about few positives also. So whenever you find the difficult positives to analyze, you should try and pick them up. So if you have an opportunity where you have to justify that the collegium system for the appointment of the judges is what is right, there you can use this particular example, that a lack of a collegium system in the case of the Chief Election Commissioner often results in accusations that the post is what is malified, or for that matter, the post is dominated and controlled by the executive or the government in power. So these are some analyses that are useful, and this is how you have to derive it. Next, the editorial is discussing about the Model Code of Conduct as a law, and this is the most important part of this particular editorial. A question like this can directly come, that should the Model Code of Conduct be made into a law? Now, first and foremost, we had discussed this previously also, that the MCC, you should know that the Model Code of Conduct is an Indian innovation. It is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. It is what first came into existence in the year 1960 during the Legislative Assembly elections of Kerala, and later in the year 1962, this was what was implemented in the Lok Sabha elections also. And then this is what's kept developing. So as a result of which the proper Model Code of Conduct that is implemented today, it has evolved over the several years, and also it is now held in high regard. But what is being analyzed today is that, is there a need to convert this into a fixed law? Now the editorial is negating this idea, and these are some points that you should remember. The first point here is that why the Model Code of Conduct should not be made into a fixed law. It should not be made into a fixed law, firstly because this will result in shifting the power from the Election Commission of India to the judiciary, which is something that is unwarranted. Why should all the power go to judiciary and no power be there with the Election Commission of India? Next is that this is going to make the justice slow, because if it goes to the judiciary, then minimum we can keep 10 years for the decision to come. And if that is going to be the particular case, then the decision on this matter will be delayed by at least 10 years. Then what is the result of this? At least today, the Model Code of Conduct ensures that if a reprimand of a particular political leader is what is done under the Model Code of Conduct, then first and foremost, the naming and shaming in itself is a big event. It shames the political leader in question. And also what happens is that when a notice is what is issued for breach of the Model Code of Conduct, a reply is what is given by the political leaders within 24 hours. So where can we find such kind of prompt justice as compared to the judiciary, with the matter going to the judiciary, where the matter will take approximately 10 years. So in that light, it is being argued that Model Code of Conduct should not be converted into a law. Next, what is important here is that if it is going to be converted into a fixed law, then this is what is going to become non-flexible. At present, the Model Code of Conduct is highly flexible. So if there is some sort of a newer development that takes place, which is assumed to be a breach of the Model Code of Conduct, then in that case immediately a notice is what is issued. Whereas if this is what is converted in the form of a fixed law, then what is going to happen is that because the law is what is written and it is going to be fixed, then several manipulations will happen. If a newer kind of a breach is what takes place and it is not mentioned in the law, then it will become difficult to implement or take action against the political leader or the political party in question. So these are some issues which have been analyzed to prevent making MCC into a law. That means the need for the Model Code of Conduct is to be flexible, which is not a characteristic of a written law. Also, what has been mentioned is that already all the breaches of the Model Code of Conduct are what are covered under law. Punishment for them is what is there in different kinds of laws. For that matter, under the Representation of People's Act also there is some punishment. So already there is a legal provision for it. Then what is the need for again making the Model Code of Conduct also into a law? So this is something that you should, if an option is what is given to you, then you have to give your opinion. You should rather give a negative opinion that no, it should not be converted into a law, because this is what has been given by experts here and this is what is justiciable. Next, what is important is the question of the Prime Minister's TV channel. Now, a TV channel is what has been dedicated to the Prime Minister. It is called Namo TV, and this is what is believed to be a channel that is owned by the BJP, and it is also being said that this is what is owned by the Prime Minister. So in this regard, a question can come that is it legitimate for political leaders to have television channels? Now here an example is what has been given of South India. The editorial is telling us that in South India, several political leaders have their own news channel, and time and again on these news channels, news that is favoring them or which is bringing about their propaganda is what is published. So this is something that is a common norm. But the problem here is that when this television channel that is owned by a leader or for that matter a political party is what is used for election propaganda. In that case, the expenses of this is what is not shown as the election expenses by the political party, because they say that this is their own channel, so they did not make any payment, and this is what is wrong. They are definitely, a cost is definitely being incurred for publishing their own data or their own propaganda on this particular channel, and this is what should be shown as an election expense, is what has been discussed here. So this is a newer angle to this entire controversy, so this is why I picked it up for discussion. And the last issue is that of the power for deregistering of political parties. This we had discussed yesterday also, that the Election Commission of India has the power to register political parties, but the similar power for deregistering of a political party is not given to the Election Commission of India, no matter how grave the offence is what is conducted or what is done by the political party. So in this context, what is important is that this power be given to the Election Commission of India. What is new here is that you should know that this is a battle that the Election Commission of India is fighting for 20 years. For the past 20 years, it is demanding that it be given the power for deregistering of political parties. So in that light, this article is very, very important, and this opinion is entirely important here. These are opinions given by experts in this field. S.Y. Qureshi was a former Chief Election Commissioner, and as a result of which the opinions are what are highly objective in nature, and please try and use them whenever a question on this topic does come, which we are very much expecting for General Studies paper 2. So that is the entire relevance of this particular issue. And with this, we finish today's discussion. Please take a look at our batches. We are starting an IAS Prelims revision batch from the 20th of April. So those of you who are interested, please do get in touch with us. These are our contact details. With this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching the video.